What a glorious second theme in the third sonata by Chopin, when the incredible, beautiful melodic line, bel canto, is presented on a beautiful sound resonant carpet of triplets with such an elegant and incredibly emotional wave pattern of arpeggios. It's so subtle, elaborate, sophisticated, and deeply emotional, while the melody floats above it. That's why they say, Chopin used to say, my right hand ignores what my left hand does. Or I sing through my piano like a Bellini opera. And the bel canto with the vocalise and the incredible amount of improvised or notated as such, to be imitated as such. Bel canto's incredible emotional cadenzas. And these vocalises are to be part of the rubato that will allow them to be fit in the right hand for the left hand's patterns. So hence the rubato, because it gives the time to place the extra notes, which of course at the time the divas of the operas were improvising. So the prowess of their singing was what people came to hear, and therefore the orchestra accompaniment waited until they merge in traffic for the next tempo. Could play this without knowing that, and you could hear it already by the beauty that Chopin himself brings in the piece, regardless of the inspiration from this other genre of the opera, the lyrical opera style, which obviously Mozart also experienced so much. In his instrumental output inspired by opera, the Italian-style opera seria in this case. Whenever Chopin is the 19th century romantic opera called Bel Canto, beautiful singing. And this glorious second theme comes in the relative major of the B minor sonata. And therefore B minor is the triad that has two common tones with the relative major, of course. D major were the second theme. And the second theme we will see travels to F sharp minor, which has also two common tones. That's how the statement of the lyrics, I would like to tell you how much I would like to dance with you, or that is of course silly, or for the vocalise would be perhaps on a single vowel like amour or amore, ah. No. That's silly of mine. I promised myself when I'll become a teacher I won't sing, because piano teachers who sing sound silly to their students. And I doubt that voice teachers in turn give piano examples for their voice students. But piano teachers tend to always give the incentive for the singing legato, lyrical, arched phrasing of the singing, to imagine lyrics that you're projecting through your articulation, legato, semi-legato, mezzo-legato, overlapping legato, and the beauty meaning and suggestive meaning of a leap in the case of the rising of the fourth, hugging the appoggiatura to the G, which is the A. It's not he could have gone, but and aesthetic of beauty is beyond the purpose. Of course, it defeats actually the purpose. It enhances the purpose, rather. In the fact, like in architecture, decoration was part of the aesthetic for the eyes. Like a Bach fugue has beauty while it's structurally organized for a functionality of polyphony. So is architecture. It's functional for its structure that has to house people or goods, and therefore it has to be sound. But it could also, while being soundly constructed, be aesthetically beautiful. And I think that this is something that when art gets invalidated by the structural necessity of the purpose in the form, in the structure, in the organization of the thoughts, then I think we get to more technical aspects of playing. We could hear this theme without any rubato, very precisely stated. But the reason he has these triplets for 2 against 3 is because on the first of the 2 you fit with the other note of the accompaniment, but the second fits between the 2 and the 3 of the triplet. So you have one of the notes that floats between of the notes of the others. And then you have the deep fetched basses in the pattern of the accompaniment. As usual, Chopin's stretch of disposition for the thumb far away, not the Alberti. The Alberti, very stretched. And the bass line is far away. If I play with 2 hands, the left hand, I already have everything I have to express except the melody, which is essential. Therefore, the left hand has to play the bass line and the harmonic chords diluted in triplets, arpeggios. And the pedal has to catch without to smear, while without to lose the bass line. And that is because it's harmonic, and therefore you have consonance. But when you have step motion in the singing, which is the natural step motion singing pattern, then you hear this crutched group of notes, and if you use the pedal for the left hand on them, then it's blending. If you only change the pedal by pumping 3/4 or half or quarter pedal, you keep resonance and you clear at the same time the resonance in order to not overclog or bury under pedal the melodic notes. Ideally, we should have 2 keyboards, one for the melody, one for the accompaniment, and the right foot pedal for the left foot, and the left foot pedal, a right foot pedal for the right hand. Well, that is when you do for 2 pianos, actually, but not on the single. So Chopin was not having a middle pedal either, which can selectively hold the bass, and then. But we play him on the modern piano that has the middle pedal, that has longer decay than his instrument for the tempo of the long values. Also, we have to make sure we exit the long value by a softer dynamic of the first short that blossoms the sound instead of creating a break, because we don't take in account the decay of the sound when musically the syncopation carries the vibrato. But there's no vibrato on the piano. You cannot do that, it's silly. So In fact, it's make-believe that Chopin gives us to hear that we can combine and the singer and the accompaniment and the pedal and the harmony and a creative bass line with a distant fetched basses, which brings me to talk to you about Cortot, who was the one who didn't only do, but who crystallized in his teaching the necessity to isolate the melodic note from the bass note. For instance, this appoggiatura AG would go with the bass note. And therefore it's written aligned and you should play. But in fact, no. Because that's what he does. He aligns it so that, well, he actually doesn't align it. He dislocates it. And it allows to hear this bass note and then the melody and then the harmony. So this rubato then adds time to the beat, to the bar. You structure a little bit loosely. But you separate the importance of, and Chopin himself doesn't choose every beat to have a distant fetched bass. It's only from time to time. For instance, in the middle, when he modulates, as I earlier said, to F sharp minor, through B minor, in the intimacy of the statement, the whisper, the thought, the shared confidence, the avowal is when you don't have this operatic spread of the opening, but you are here in the intimacy of the range where the two hands are literally almost bound, right? And you have in which case I don't believe it's necessary to dislocate the bass from the melody when they're so close, because they are to become a unit. When you have a distant fetch bass, he chooses this for the resonance that it brings through the harmonics of it. And then he adds on top of it a middle voice, hinted. At the end of the first phrase, and then retakes this phrase after breathing, just like singers would do, and retake the statement. And that's when he bridges in the accompaniment. Of course, he doesn't mark it like that as I did. Doesn't suggest it in the score with a stem. But it brings a bridging to make you understand that while the singer takes her breath to say the second stanza of the text, the orchestra participates in the accompaniment towards her statement. It appears to be first neutrally separate between this and the two elements, and then in the bridge, so you have to defer the pedal change to keep that when you fetch the bass, and fake that you have three hands in the left hand holding this and arpeggioing this and fetching that while singing this. So where do I go? Where do I think? How do I organize? Of course, you have to plan it ahead of time in order to not lose one or drop the other. Oh, easier said than done. But I will give you the example when it's overstated. Or more discreetly stated. Oops, sorry, that was wrong. I guess I'm not good at doing it discreet. I should try to prove the point, because interpretation is exploration. Because it's there, but you don't bring it out. And the beauty of it is to choose the dosage. And who decides what is the right dosage, or how much is too much, or how much is good taste, and who defines? Well, the teacher, the performer, the inspirational, let's say, artist who you heard play it. But it's not all written in the score. It's hinted in the pattern. Once you're aware of all these details, you have to still play it through with a flow which overtakes the details in the importance of the sentence, which with lyrics has a meaning by itself, and here by the patterns of the emotional suggestion of the intervals, like the sixth dropping and rising the tritone and the under appoggiatura, and then he develops this is a quintuplet over 6. So, and very often you hear it 2 plus 3, but that's not right. This stretch of the quintuplet, it's a way to say, stay longer with me. Or the opposite, stressing the desire to go forward. A trill, which is a Baroque notation for something that is a vibrato. And then interrupting the ending of the phrase by an vocalise, cadenza, which he writes down in regular 16th notes, not grace notes, a smaller size font. But of course, they don't fit in the amount of 8 eighth notes. So you have to add an eighth, or ninth eighth note. In the following, the necessary rubato for this vocalise. Of course, rubato means stolen time, but in this case it's added time. Sometimes it's stolen when you do the accelerando. And you could also make it unevenly fast. The first pattern of it can be a scale, and then a pattern of fourths. So you can break the glissando style into. I personally think it's necessary to listen to your inner voice when you choose how you manage to display these notes, which are unmeasured by essence. Just like the grace notes that Chopin likes to add, for instance, before the trill. And when you have this pattern of notation with a dotted quarter, 8th note, 16th, when it's played freely and you don't hear the bar lines when you hear it, and you shouldn't, you don't have the score in front of the eyes as a listener, so you don't know if this it's a grace note, or is it a 16th note, which is in this case with a syllable. If you stretch the 16th note, or you stress it, and then a stretch triplet, and then repeated notes, which is insistence or term of endearment with changing of syllables, of vowels or consonants. I would like, rather than or. So sometimes you have to play, therefore, the melodic line in the meaningful legato of repeated notes, because they suggest the lyrics that could have been sang on this aria if it wasn't played on the piano. Then the quintuplet. And then he does a triplet with dotted rhythm inside, plus the trill in a crescendo. So you feel like there the rubato, by the accumulation of busyness of the expression of the melodic line in the rhythmic patterns, brings you in a thrust forward to this leap of the 10th, and then you stay suspended waiting for, or the opposite with the same conviction. And you don't have to always do the same. That's the little space where he gives you room to express how you want to bridge this melodic line through this decorative cadential style, improvised, in this case notated obviously, but sounding improvisatory style pattern. What can I say? Nothing more than it's a glorious theme. It's given to us, up to us to insert it with all these minute details within the great shape of the piece itself, through the transitions and the development, and then how it comes in the recapitulation in major when tonalized in B major. Since it was in major because of the principal minor key in the exposition, it could have been exposed in minor for the principal tonalities, tonalization in the mode of minor. And it changes completely the mood from radiant in the exposition D major, and he keeps it radiant in B major. Of course, his second movement is in E flat major, which is common with the D sharp of the Picardy major third of B major. Had he finished with the minor theme in the principal key for the second theme, he would have finished with common tone for the relative major. He could have had the second movement in D major, and nobody would have found it awkward. But it is true that it was expected because of the relation of the tonalities. I find it striking that in the Romantic era, minor and major became increasingly more meaningful in terms of the expression of the emotion. And I find that sadness and happiness are, of course, more subtly expressed in minor, that has touches of major, and smile with tear, minor, major. You have subtleties in this. It's not all clear-cut minor, major. But there is a suggestion that when you hear, it's not, because it hints to something happy, and this to something tragic, and at least sad, if not tragic, perhaps nostalgic, in the first ballad. So therefore, when you have a theme presented in glorious D major, and you could have had the treatment in minor of the same theme, Mozart does in K310. Relative major, minor. Schumann in the F sharp minor sonata has a second theme relative major, and in the recap in minor. But I must say overall, mostly in the Romantic era, major tonalize the principal minor key second theme, and it makes them finish like Tchaikovsky concerto in major, the first movement, and both sonatas of Chopin number 2 and 3, which are in principal minor keys, finishing in I think it's also because in many aspects, minor and major in Baroque was lesser mood changing. Of course, it was coloring the atmosphere, but it wasn't as dramatically displaying a suggestion psychologically of desperation and hope, minor, major. And I think Romantic era being all about emotions from a Romance, which was the vernacular Latin version that was no more Latin, spoken in France, where you wrote in the 8th, 9th century, especially into the 14th, with a courteous love, gorgeous storytellings that were mostly about epic stories and possibly love stories, hence romantic, as we use it in English for that meaning. And Romantic era is where obviously the formal music of Haydn was broken into the emotional aspect of the expression that gets rid of the formal presentation. Not to say that there is no emotional and romanticism within Haydn's music, because there is, but is more hidden inside rather than openly presented as it is in the mid of the 19th century. All this evolution of classical Western music, European basic region of between Vienna and Paris, developed amazingly towards that concept of the self-expression of one's own experience of life, emotion, philosophy, understanding, rather than the formal organization of the dances and the songs and the worship, where music was functional for these different functions. Here it becomes the expression of the soul of the artist, who, through, of course, within their time period, but we today play them outside of their context, we find the essence of their meaning so meaningful to our expression, not like as a museum expression. But this is something which is striking, isn't it? That music means so many things to so many people, meant so many things to so many people, and today means individually for all of us, and each of us, especially when we play a special second theme like Chopin's Third Sonata's First movements. What a marvel. And what a duty to serve it right, to serve the muse. Thank you.